Hello, YouTube Collective. Today I am back with another literal astrology moment. These are going to be some just really quick talks that I plan on trying to incorporate on my channel about just how astrology works, how it works in my own life, or perhaps maybe someone else's life that I get a pleasure of working with through looking at their natal chart and their astrological transits and placements. And so, yeah, so stay tuned for these just pop-ons on literal astrology moments. I think I shared one on here, just one other uh, a moment that I shared about a week ago, where I talked about Venus transiting my fourth house and how that transit played out for me literally. I literally got a gift from a family member that consisted of money and uh, clothes and perfumes and all of these Venusian themed just goodies, right? So I do plan on hopping on here every once in a while and just sharing about different transits and how astrology plays out in your life for real. Okay, so without further ado, I want to hop on here today to talk about a literal astrology moment, but also it kind of have a twist connected with it because it's also talking about like the natal promise. And I know I haven't spoken a lot about the natal promise. Um, and a lot of people who deal with astrology or astrologers or people you learn astrology from, you will hear certain people talk a little bit about the natal promise, and then some really won't mention the natal promise. I tend to look back over that a lot, and sometimes people reference things and predictive things that are happening in your life, and they are referring to the natal promise, even though sometimes they may not say it right off bat that what they're discussing or um, what they're trying to show about what's happening is in some shape or form connected to the natal promise. And the natal promise is sort of like things that are predictive and destined to happen for you according to your blueprint, your life. It is sort of like your own little destiny, if you will. And these different things, excuse me, this camera is going to drive me crazy if I don't move it around. There we go. These things are sort of baked into your natal chart pretty much, and it shows you just different events that are going to play out in your life at different times, like when you have children or when you get married. It'll be very memorable promises that are um, due or expected, I should say, possibly to happen in your life. And so, the natal promise is something that I generally love to look at, especially when I'm looking at someone's natal chart or if I am tracking certain transits that are happening and aligning in my own natal chart. And it really does help you to understand when things are, supposed to be playing out or when they will play out. And also, I made a video the other day about the new moon in Taurus, which I prefaced it with a question, what is growing and blossoming for you? And that's sort of what I want to share today with my literal astrology moment here is what I've noticed that is growing and blossoming for me. And so it's connected though with my natal promise. And I think um, when we look in terms of manifestation, when we look in terms of what's happening in our lives or what's happening around the world or what's happening with the collective, it's very important to understand that, these things have certain timing events and different years that perhaps they are supposed to occur in. It doesn't mean that maybe you manifested something, 2 years ago, or you started a seeding point for a particular area of your life. And maybe you didn't even know you started it, or you did know you started it. And you're like, well, is this thing even blossoming? Is it growing? What's going on? And so I'm here today, friends, to share with you that, I was able to kind of look back over sort of what have been growing and blossoming in the sort of Taurus area of my chart, and sort of connecting it and tying it back, excuse me, back to the natal promise. Um, just how it will show up for you if you have planets or placements around these particular areas in your chart. Sometimes it's easier to look back and sort of see, what was planting or what was growing or seeding, and due to blossom for you, maybe at the time when it is promised. Okay. So I wanted to share a little bit about that today as my natal, or as my literal astrology example. So in I'm just going to read. I did make some note cards today. So I'm going to just read a little bit of what I wrote and some dates that were pretty important for me in terms of looking back over um sort of this time that I'm in right now in my life, and this Taurus new moon, and what has been growing and blossoming and blooming, perhaps, or um all of those good things, right? All of those areas in our life that we want to see progress and growth. So back in 2024, um there was a Taurus new moon, and I don't know if I wrote down the exact date. I don't think I wrote the exact date, but it was in 2024. And so there was a Taurus new moon, and there was like this stellium of planets in Taurus. So a stellium in astrology is when there's like a lot of different planets that are connected or that are in the same sign. And they are sort of all jumbled together. Sometimes they're really close in degrees. Sometimes they're just all in that in that sign or in that area of your chart, but it, still the intensity is pretty much felt because these planets are present with one another. So, back in 2024, there was a new moon in Taurus, and there was a stellium of planets. So, I'm going to read to you. Obviously, it's a new moon. So, the sun and the moon were together at a seeding point of creating, sort of like this last Taurus new moon we just had with the sun and the moon together. Um, and I think Mercury was with them. But anyhow, back in 2024, there was the sun and the moon, there was Venus, there was Jupiter, and and it was also Uranus. And these planets were all together in Taurus. So 5 out of the 10 planets and luminaries were all in Taurus at this new moon seeding point. So why is this important? Well, for a number of reasons, this is important. One of those reasons is that whenever planets are said to be in a stellium like that, where there's many, planets all in the same sign or all in that same one area in your chart, there is a lot of emphasis put on this energy for you, perhaps it is something seeding there. You can't really see it just yet, especially at a new moon. I've talked a little bit on here about how a new moon is like the dark moon phase. So you don't really know what's seeding, and you have ways of kind of understanding it if you look at the natal promise and things like that, and you have planets or placements near these degrees that this is all seating at, you can kind of look ahead and tell, oh, okay, so maybe something around this area in my life will show up, right? Well, the five out of these planets that were all seating together here in 2024 in the Taurus area of my chart, um was one of the planets was conjunct my one of my natal planets, okay? And at the, I think maybe within like 1 degree from my natal planet. And because of that, because of the intensity from all of this Taurus energy in 2024 at this new moon, it was really activating for me this area in my life. And so, why am I sharing all of this? This literal astrology moment and transits. What does that mean for me now? Well, now, 2 years later, okay, we come back to this area of my life, okay? And there are certain things in my natal chart that I am just designed to experience, like all natal charts. You have certain planets and points that will come together at a different time to play out in your life, as I mentioned earlier in the video, say getting married or having children or what have you. And then that energy in your life will play out, which is pretty cool. And so as I was looking back and I sort of track and follow my natal promise and my seeding and growing and blossoming, as you if you follow my moon cycles journey, I was able to look back and see that in 2024, I had a natal planet that was conjunct this new moon period that would show up now 2 years later in 2026 at the new moon in Taurus. So these are some of the things I'm talking about. Due to that intensity, there was a lot, you know, going on in my life in 2024. Um, I was manifesting balance, healthy routines, just change in how I viewed my role as a caregiver, a server, a teacher, a provider for my family, um, and really just astrology. I had really connected more with taking my astrology studies to a higher level. Um, and just, my values and my beliefs around astrology and how I viewed my life in all of these different areas that I just mentioned. And so, now here we are in um you know 2026. Okay, and so what's growing, what's blossoming, what and all that stuff that I've mentioned in my new moon video that I shared with you guys the other day. My family routines have changed. My mind, body, belief, and praxis is like it's on a whole new level now. Like, my belief system have really changed like dramatically since 2024. And let's just say there were areas in my life where I had to learn a lot of how to do things that initially I didn't know how to do. But in my natal chart, it was shown in my natal promise that I would eventually come to a time in my life where I would be able to manifest these changes and, you know, not only believe in them, I guess, but, or not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. Okay. Is basically what I'm trying to say. And so that is the point that I'm at now. And it's just like this whole new, level in my life centered around my beliefs and love and authenticity. Having the accurate values and beliefs that aligned with me, versus just, values and beliefs that kind of came from wherever. Now I'm teaching more. I'm counseling more, especially on astrology. As I mentioned, I took my astrology studies and praxis to a higher level and focus. And that is actually shown in my natal chart, believe it or not, that, there I would come to a time from where I used to be very religious and going to church every Sunday and sort of almost like a legalistic Christianity to what some may look at now and probably call me a atheist, or not really an atheist, but just um someone who doesn't align at all with Christian values, beliefs, or God, or any of that stuff from that level and focus, and not being afraid to share that, and to stand by that. So I'm teaching more. My values and beliefs and what I'm teaching has changed. My soul perspective of truth and authentic growth. All these things have just become so much more literal in my life, and just how I align my life and the people who I align myself around. Um, so yeah, I think that's all I wanted to share. Um, and I wanted to just say, the abundant gift that keeps on expanding and nourishing me with the right nutrients. I think that's so important, and that's so important around this Taurus season and this Taurus new moon. And looking back 2 years later, over my natal promise, over what's been growing and blossoming in my Taurus area of my life, is sort of this theme of my worth and what is really nourishing me, what is giving me the nutrients I need to continue to blossom and to continue to grow. And seeing that as a theme that just keeps coming back and keeps playing out and keeps producing tangible results in my life. So that's what I wanted to share today from my literal astrology, a sort of natal promise, I guess you can say, example. So if this resonates with you, very happy to hear that it did. If you have something perhaps maybe you want to share, I don't know the exact date of that Taurus new moon in 2024, but if you had planets or placements around that area of, I think the sun and the moon were at about 18 degrees of Taurus, and I can't remember the other planets and what their degrees were, but if you would want me to look back and sort of see what possibly has been playing out in your life, I would love to do that. Otherwise, friends, I will see you in the next video, and thanks for listening.